I know a biblical secret that will double the amount of spending money you have every single month. I'm Tim. I'm a husband, a father, a grandfather. I'm also a pastor and a conference speaker. When I was in my 20s and my 30s, had a couple of pastors that taught me these principles. And now that I'm in my 50s, they have really paid off. And I'm excited to share them with you today. The way that I generally teach is by giving you a couple verses, explaining those verses, showing how those verses work in their context, and how they are applicable for today. Here's the two important verses. The first one is Proverbs 22:7. The borrower is slave to the lender. And the second one is Proverbs 13:11. Wealth gained hastily will dwindle, but whoever gathers little by little will increase it. Those two verses are so simple and so profound, and yet hardly anybody understands them or knows how they work. Let's start with Proverbs chapter 22. The borrower is slave to the lender. Back in Solomon's day, if you didn't pay your bills, you didn't get to file chapter 7 or chapter 11 of bankruptcy. You were taken into custody by the person that you owed, and you became their slave. You literally moved out of your house, you moved into their house, and you worked in the field until A, your debt was paid off, or B, the year of Jubilee. Every 7 years, all the slaves were set free. Now, there was an exception to that. If you liked the person that you had been working for or had been a slave to, you could choose to stay and become their bond slave. They would take you to the doorpost of their house, and they would take an awl and they would stick your ear to the doorpost. Then you would rip it out. So you could always tell a bond slave, because instead of having a continuous lobe, they would have two little flappy things in its place. Of course, you've probably heard that many of the New Testament writers consider themselves to be bond slaves of Jesus Christ. They had willingly given up their freedom so that they could follow him and do whatever he asked them to do. It's a definition of a bond slave. You're not subject to it, but you've made yourself into a bond slave. So in Solomon's day, people literally became slaves when they couldn't pay off their debt. Well, today, we become slaves to our debt as well. And we don't think about it that way. But I'm going to take you to my kitchen table and show you what the average American family makes and what the average American family keeps. All right. Hey, welcome to my kitchen table. We're going to use this Monopoly money to show what is going on with the average income. Okay, so our average monthly income, this is household income, so it includes single people and people filing jointly married, is $6,977. That is approximately $7,000, and I'm going to be rounding off for this video. So as you can see, each one of these piles is worth $1,000. So we have $7,000 on the table here. Of course, these are $1,000 a piece, $500 bills. We got the $100 bills and 50 together, they make 1,000. So if we take $1,650 and we give it to the government, we end up with our net take-home pay. By the way, that is the average amount you're going to be paying. You could complain about that if you would like to, and certainly plenty of people do, but that doesn't change the fact that you are still going to take home the same amount of money. The only thing you can do is vote, and after that,
What happens in your house is more important than what happens in the White House. So we got to remember that. We are not going to change our life by trying to change things that we can't change. So $1,650 gone. That leaves us with $5,350. The average mortgage payment is $2,005. We're going to round that off to $2,000. There's your $2,000. Your average new car payment is $767. We're going to round that to $750. So there's 5, 6, 7, 50 gone. Your average student loan payment is $299. We're going to call that 300. 1, 2, 3, gone. Your average credit card payment is $181. That equals $200. So there's 200 and that is gone. So what remains is we got 1,000 here. We've got 1,000 here, which is $2,100. $2,098 from that big pile of money that started. This is what consumer debt does to you. And this is why I say that your biggest expense is money. You can't do anything about the taxes. From this, everything else needs to come out. Groceries, health insurance, utility bills, gasoline, savings, giving, everything else comes out of what is left over. And there's not a lot there. So you want to get financial freedom? This pile over here is all going to pay for your money. If you bring that back to the equation, it changes the game.
If you take the $2,098 from our example and divide that by 5,350, the average take-home pay, you'll find that that is 39%. Do you realize that the average American is only living on 39% of what they actually make? That means if you bring that back, you'll have 61% more money to live on. That second verse, Proverbs 13:11, talks about gathering little by little. Well, how can you gather little by little when you're giving away over 61% of your income? I mean, think about what would happen if we just gave you double what you're living on now. Have you ever been in the situation where something has happened at work? Maybe you've been treated poorly, or maybe somebody has asked you to do something that's unethical, and you thought, man, if I didn't have bills to pay, I'd be out here. Well, you've become a slave to your lender. You can't just quit your job. I'm going to give you 3 practical steps so that you don't have to be a slave to the lender. Step number 1, quit digging. If you find yourself in debt or owing somebody money, quit borrowing more. If I found myself in a hole and I wanted to get out, I wouldn't keep digging. I'd be looking for a way to get out. We do that with a budget. We need to know what we have, what we owe, what's coming in, what's going out, and we have to manage that money. As a bond slave of Christ, I do not own anything. I am simply a manager of it. The old-fashioned word for that is steward. God has given me the skills, talents, and abilities to make money. He has gifted me with it, and He expects me to take care of it. So when I was in my 20s and my 30s, these 2 pastors that I work for forced me to put money into my retirement. Like, had I been given the option, I would not have put it into a 403B is where it went for me since I was a pastor. But now that I'm 50 and looking at what that's worth. And by the way, eventually I got on board, and given the opportunity to not do it anymore, I chose to continue. But that little by little, every single month, putting some money into that account, and little by little paying off my mortgage has set me up to be comfortable in my retirement. And I'm not going to be buying Ferraris or anything, but I feel very comfortable. Well, we have been walking up this mountain a little by little. And now that we're at the top, we get to enjoy the view. Completely ruined by the sun. Another thought is I'm going up this steep hill and I'm having a hard time breathing. And I'm trying to talk to a camera. So that's not a real wise thing to do.